All right. Your name is still shows up as Ilya. What do I actually call you, and why are you showing up as Ilya?
Yeah, that's my name, actual. Uh,
Okay. I could have sworn I
and
saw a message from you earlier saying that that was not your name, that you were using somebody
yeah,
else's account.
it was Nadia because it was not my account, but
Ah,
uh,
okay.
so
Okay.
there was. Yeah. Okay. So I plan to share my previous religious background as I'm a strong atheist now, and also talk about some issues with believers and Bible.
Okay.
So I'm pretty sure I'm confident at this topic to speak of.
Okay.
Okay, so can I start? Uh,
Please go ahead.
yeah. Okay, uh, so I was raised in Christian background. Uh, I was not, let's say, hardcore believer, not fanatic, but okay, we went to church and prayed and so on. So it's called, as I learned now, it's called indoctrination when you don't have a choice really of
Yeah.
religion. Uh, so you are not even aware that you have a choice actually. Everyone is Christian, so why wouldn't you be one of them?
Yeah.
Yeah, but in my case, I was educated, so I was not creationist at any point. So I accepted evolution, abiogenesis, and Big Bang, and accepted religion at the same time.
Yeah.
Uh, so
Now, what
maybe
was your
I
background? What was your background? Was it Orthodox? Was it Catholic? What do you think?
Orthodox. It was
Okay.
Orthodox, and it was for many years. But yeah, and I was believing sincerely with all my heart. I was praying and uh, waiting for my answers for um, everything that I wanted. Sometimes praying was asked in some way, sometimes it wasn't. So already I gave up, let's say, traditional church and started looking for something else. Um, so then I came to some, how do you call it in English? Baptists, Jehovah's Witnesses, and
When you were
so on.
raised Orthodox, did they let you know that there were other? I mean, of course, you knew about Islam, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I knew like really vaguely about Islam. I was not aware, let's say, that uh, anything of Islam doctrine or there was no Islam Muslims around. So uh,
Can I ask
I
where you were, geographically at that time?
uh, I was in Ukraine.
Okay. All right. So you
Uh,
you, you so you knew about you knew vaguely about Islam, and
yeah,
surely you knew that Catholics exist also, right?
right. And
Okay.
in Ukraine, actually, there are some regions that are Catholic also, and
Okay.
some others are Orthodox.
Yeah. See,
Um,
that was my upbringing. My family was Mormon, and everybody in our community was Mormon. So it didn't seem weird to be Mormon because everybody's Mormon. But then we
yeah,
go to a
that's
big city somewhere, any big city, and suddenly being Mormon is weird.
yeah, that's the issue too. Uh, so if you are in some society that um, then you are let's say you are pushed to have a strict type of religion. That's real problem with this religion organizations. Okay, so I started to look some Baptists and Jehovah's Witnesses and some others, and suddenly I was really underwhelmed when interacting with them. I was, expecting some, something more than in Orthodox Church, and suddenly um, it was even less. So let's say I realized, as even a sincere believer, then that none of denominations also made sense to me, at least. And especially, let's say, when um, so maybe couple examples. So when we talked about some, let's say, music, and there's, well, what do you like? What kind of music? And uh, I answered Rammstein, and he
You
didn't
answered
knew
what did you say? Rammstein?
Rammstein.
Okay,
Uh,
gotcha.
yeah,
Similarly,
and
you being Ukrainian, you might appreciate one of my favorite bands is Ginger.
uh, I'm not aware of that, unfortunately.
Okay.
Okay, so and he didn't knew about Rammstein for some reason, so I gave him an example of what is it of Rammstein. He listened and he was frightened of it. He was visually frightened. He listened to the song, and he said, "Well, that's an evil song. How can you listen to it? How can you like it? It's devil uh, singing. It's not the right song." And as a sincere believer, I asked myself, when, what am I doing with this person? It's He's insane. If uh, if he calls music evil just for how it sounds, that's really bizarre.
Some of us really like that too. I listen to a lot of death metal. I'm not particularly a fan of death metal, but I find it soothing. Death metal and black metal both. I find the fact that I can't understand a lot of the lyrics to be soothing. But Ginger's a really good example. There's a power to the music. I don't know what it is about the really, not just heavy metal, but black metal, death metal, and others, that there's a resonance with me, and I understand that it frightens some people. If you were to play, I remember when, what's his name, Marilyn Manson did
Yeah,
the remake of "Sweet Dreams Are Made of This." I loved
yes,
his remake, but I
yeah,
realized if you were to go back to the 1950s, or you were to go back to even the time I was born, and play somebody that video that he made for that song, that would absolutely terrify people. But
right.
it's completely relaxing for me. I enjoy it. It's just an art form.
Yeah, well, I think his makeup is frightening, or
Yeah.
yeah, how he looks in his clips. Um, that's really strange looking, and not everyone accepts it, I guess. Yeah, but anyway, other example from music also. So other conversation. So I mentioned Madonna. I said, well, Madonna is safe option, and it turns out Madonna is also evil. And you know the reason?
I,
The,
I couldn't imagine.
uh,
Why is Madonna evil?
yeah, so the answer was that Madonna on a live stage, when she was performing, she was using the cross, and
When you
since
say using, what do you mean?
so it was a cross in on stage, and she walked around it. Yeah, a big cross, bigger than
Okay.
her. And since she used the cross, it's sacrilege, and she's evil. That's it. And that's
Right.
how I give up with discussing music and actually everything else.
So when you give me an
With
idea and give my audience an idea what it's like what it was like what you when you grew up in Ukraine. I don't know how old you are, but was it still Soviet back then?
well, it was not Soviet already, but
Okay.
we had obviously we had let's say lingerings of Soviet, but well,
Yeah,
not
I have
anymore.
some friends that grew up in Soviet countries, and so
Mhm.
they give me the recounting of their childhood growing up that way, and how different it was to what we would expect, and so forth. And so I appreciate that. I appreciate a different perspective. But go ahead with. So this was post-Soviet. So you
Yeah, and
give us an idea then what it's like to grow up in an Orthodox country where everybody's Orthodox and so forth.
yeah, well, it's highly, let's say, traditional. So I don't know about, let's say, I don't know so much about Catholic or Protestant, but Orthodox is relying on centuries of traditions. So, for example, there is Russian language, Ukrainian, and there is also the older language that is, before Russian and Ukrainian. It's called, mm, I don't know how it's called in English, but uh, uh, Old Slavonic, maybe like that. So it's an older version that was used, let's say, in 19th century and before. And Orthodox Church was using it widely. And the funny thing is, we still have that language that is obsolete now, but in church books there is tons of it actually, and it's really strange to read. So you, let's say, it's like imagine that religion books were in Latin, for example, and suddenly you're reading a language that no one uses anymore.
Yeah. Yep. So,
So
so, so the Orthodox have the same practice as the Catholics in that everything stays in Latin. Did I hear
yeah,
that
but
correctly?
everything is, almost everything stays in this old slave language.
Okay, it's
Uh,
funny how you have this one group that says that Latin is God's language, and then across the border you got other people saying no, 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 God speaks Arabic, and then across the
yeah,
other border goes no, the language has always been Hebrew.
yeah, and yeah. So apparently, yeah, all people think that God speaks their language. Yeah, so
Yeah,
they
and
consider
and here in
themselves.
America we had a famous Texan politician who said that if English is good enough for Jesus, it's good enough for Texas.
Yeah, so maybe he is unaware that Jesus didn't speak English. The English doesn't exist even
Yeah.
when Jesus existed, and or he is lying. Maybe I'm not sure.
Okay.
So yeah, so either way, the um, this interaction with Baptists was really disappointing. Same with Orthodox. So I went to um, some other uh, denominations, but they failed too, like Jehovah's Witnesses, of course. And um, we have actually we have a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses. But it turns out they are actually as bizarre as every other denomination. And I still cling to my beliefs that, well, I was raised in it, so how can I let go of this belief? And the primary issue was when I interacted with believers that they always bring up some Bible quotes, and they say, "Well, it's the wisest book of all times. You should read it. There is a quote. It's wise."
Yeah,
And
that was the same thing they told me. Ultimate disappointment. They tell me that
yeah,
God is love and he's wisdom, he's the supreme intelligence. And so if I read the Bible, I'm going to get all kinds of brilliant facts well beyond what anybody could have understood on their own in the Iron Age. I'm going to get wisdom and ethics and morality and how to live charitably and how to sustain the planet one and all of that. That's what I'm going to get out of the Bible. No,
no, and then you read actual Bible, and it's
the horror.
yeah, far from it, really far away. So at some point I decided, well, let's read the fucking Bible. What is in it? And
Yep.
so I started reading New Testament. It was much less, and it seemed um, easier to start. And I read about Jesus and um, found it at first highly contradictive and also really strange some places. So even when I read first that, well, I already asked myself as a believer, how could Jesus, for example, punish this tree for having no fruits? Is the tree guilty, really?
And
Does
it was
Jesus?
out of season anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he said so much. It is not a season, but I still punish that tree for no reason, just because he wants to. Yeah, but much more bizarre things was with this woman that came to Jesus and asked him for healing, but she was Samaritan. She was not Jew, and
Yeah.
Jesus was saying he is only strictly for Jews and no one else.
Yeah,
So yeah,
and then he referred to the Samaritans as dogs.
yeah, he
You got two different Jesuses in this book. You've got the Jesus who is only for the Jews. He's only come for the Jews. He tells his people not even to talk to the Gentiles. I'm only here for the Jewish people. But then there's this other Jesus who's supposedly here for the whole world. And this seems to me that this reads like an adaptation, like somebody comes back
uh,
and what is it?
I
It's
think
not an
that
interpolation, but it's
I
definitely a
think
revision where people say, no, Jesus can't be just for the Jewish people. We want to appeal to all these people. So it's how do we get the Europeans involved in Christianity? We have to have a Jesus who cares
yeah.
about the Gentiles, the Europeans, and so forth.
Yeah, but uh, from uh, from what I understand, I think that when Jesus died and Paul became an main apostle, and he described Jesus as for all people. He said himself that in faith there is no Jew and no alien. So he decided arbitrarily to connect all the people. So it was marketing decision from Paul to promote religion to all people. He understood that having strictly Jews, it's not gonna be very successful. Yeah. So anyway, Jesus answered to this woman referring for I am not feeding the dogs, which was very insulting, by the way. Yeah, and she asked for a second time. She was actually humiliating herself. Well, um, and and then for third time, he actually answered, "Well, let's heal you. Uh, you are healed, and you can uh, go on your own." So that was really
How did
strange.
she get healed though? She had to appeal to him, right?
Yeah,
She had to play a mind game with somebody
yeah,
who is the embodiment of God, the supreme intelligence. So
yeah,
this woman has to rationalize, effectively trick, negotiate with and trick the ultimate
yeah,
supreme intelligence, which is the same thing that you get with what was it, Abraham arguing with God. Well, what if there's only 5 people, or what is only good 10 or 20 good people in the
yeah,
so he's
yeah, and
bargaining. He's bargaining God down as if God couldn't see that coming. God doesn't
yeah.
already
So
know.
yeah, yeah. So um, uh, the other so there are many things that frighten me as a believer from Bible, from New Testament. The two other things were, so first, when Jesus said, "Well, you if you don't hate yourself, your life, and your brother, mother, so all your family, all your close friends, and uh, everything you have, so you should put me first and religion. So uh, you ought to you must dedicate your life to Jesus and what he teaches, and you throw out everything else." So I found uh, it's really strange way to present himself. So he really asks to uh, make some sacrifice for him, and it's a huge sacrifice that uh, not anyone can handle.
Yeah, that's the other weird thing is if you have all these people who follow Jesus, ignoring what he said that you have to hate your mother and your father and your mother and your sister and your brother and your wife and even your own life, and sell all your riches to feed the poor. You renounce you renounce your fortune and your family. You give up and throw away everything and pick up your cross and follow me into suffering.
Yeah,
That's one version of Jesus. And then
yeah,
we have we have another version of Jesus where he's like, turn the other cheek and forgive thy neighbor. And he's like the semi-socialist Jesus. He wants to, feed the poor, feed the masses, and all of
so
like that. And the rich
I
man
think
cannot
that,
get into heaven. And then you have the other Jesus that says, sell all your clothes to buy weapons to go to war, because I came here not to bring peace but a sword, and I'm come to divide parents from their children and husbands from their wives,
yeah,
and everyone will hate you because you follow me, which just tells me that he's a cult leader.
yeah, that's talent. I think there were at least three Jesuses on New Testament. So first was outrageous that claimed to hate your whole life and just follow him, and
Yep.
uh, sell all your clothes and
Now those could be two. I mean, there's cult leader Jesus, and then there's politicized cult leader Jesus,
so
and
maybe
and
also
one
maybe
of
he's
them, yeah, because you have like you have like the beginning of a militant period, like beginning with Constantine himself, right, where
yeah,
they want to have a militant Christianity, so that because the Christians were initially renunciate. They were devoid of wealth. They gave up all personal possessions. They were just like the Buddhists or the Jains. And then
uh,
somehow later, instead of giving up everything they owned to take care of everybody else, it became
yeah,
onward Christian soldier,
yeah.
and they were supposed to be right wing prosperity gospel, which is dead opposite from what Jesus was teaching.
Yeah, so I think what this high sermon as Matthew 5, uh, what is it? What does it call when Jesus gave sermon on the
Oh, the
mount?
Sermon on the Mount.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Which, by the way,
that's
there are Christians today who have criticized the Sermon on the Mount, saying that it is too woke.
uh, really.
Woke. Yeah. Too socialist, too leftist, and too woke. And so, even though these are the words of Jesus, Christians are now turning them down because they are favoring a militant Christianity. They're favoring Christian nationalism, wherein when you listen to and this is coming from pastors, by the way, just in the last year or so, a number of pastors were complaining that their congregations are rejecting the words of Jesus because too woke, too socialist, too
Yeah.
leftist.
Actually, um, 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 I remember some time ago, let's say maybe a year ago, I read this new newspaper that said, so there was some LGBT thing coming. So there was, how to say it, people around the streets. They were protesting and uh, calling for LGBT people to have rights and so on. And there were some person who stayed with literal quote from the Bible. So the man should not lie with other men like the woman. Yeah. So
Yeah.
person got arrested and he was on the court. And the court decided that the man expressed the views from the Bible that are outdated. So the court decided that uh, views of the Bible are outdated. That's really funny, I find. Yeah, so I think coming back to Jesus, I think Jesus giving sermon on the mountain is actually the third Jesus, who is peaceful for some reason, and there is a militant Jesus,
Yeah.
Jewish.
And neither one of them are the Father God, Jehovah, because
Yeah,
that guy was just horror on wheels.
yeah, and also he didn't describe himself as God. Only he described himself only in John's gospel. Uh,
Yeah.
in as a god in some way,
I took a
but
course in the comparative world religions and the history of comparative world religions. And one of the things that they pointed out was that the previous three gospels were trying to paint Jesus as like the new David or the new Moses or
as
as a
prophet.
king. Yeah. But then John comes along and now they have to paint God as or they have to paint Jesus as a God. And so John deviates from the previous three gospels, significantly in
Yeah,
painting Jesus as a divine character. But in that, when Jesus says things like, that I and the Father are one, people will come to me and say, well, that's Jesus admitting that he is the physical incarnation of God. I'm like, okay, well then why is it then later in the same book, in the Gospel of John, why does Jesus pray to what? Himself? He's praying to someone else and asking,
yeah,
can my disciples be one with you just as I am one with you? So Jesus is asking someone else, not himself, for permission for these other people to be one with the same way that Jesus is one with, which means that Jesus is not a physical incarnation of God. Jesus is just on the same page or on the same mission as God, and can these other people be part of that tribe too? So it's very different than what Christians interpret.
yeah. So that's come to a problem that Bible is highly contradictive and problematic. Yeah,
Yeah,
but from what I've
and
learned,
Christians don't even have an idea how
yeah,
contradictory it is. I mean, when we
well,
talk about who owned the land where Judas died at the moment that Judas died, there's a conflict over that, and the question of how Judas died. They think that's where the contradiction ends, but
yeah,
it's
but
so much deeper than that. It's the
yeah,
whole notion of the scapegoat in the first place. And why does unconditional love require conditions? Why did Jesus have to be sacrificed for an original sin that we know that never happened? But even if we pretend that it did happen still, why did Jesus have to die for it? There was no reason for any of that.
yeah. So from what I've learned about this phrase, before Abraham was I am, so original Hebrew wording is, he is describing himself as the man uh, in translation. But also you can translate it in Hebrew itself, Enoch. And he may refer to Enoch from Old Testament. There was two Enochs in our Old Testament. They were both Adam direct offsprings. So maybe Jesus himself referred to, let's say, reincarnation of this some of these Enochs, maybe. But I'm not sure about
but Jesus himself is also an adaptation of John the Baptist and an appropriation thereof. Because John the Baptist had quite a following at one point. And so what they often do is when you get a new religion come in and they want to just like take over the congregation that used to belong to the old religion, so they would write these stories where the leader of that religion is now telling everybody you now have to follow him from now on. The Muslims did that. There was a story from around 1200s where somebody comes in from the Zoroastrian faith, and they are exploring Islam, and they come to meet Jesus, because in Islam, Jesus never died. He was never crucified, never sacrificed anything, but he had magic powers and he was immortal. So this Muslim or this Zoroastrian pilgrim meets Jesus, who comes out of his house every day and heals a bunch of people who are standing online to be healed, and he heals all these people, and then he goes back inside. So the Zoroastrian asks him, for the truth of God or whatever, and Jesus tells this guy. Now remember, this is from a folk tale from around 1200.
Yeah.
Jesus tells this guy that I am not the final prophet. You need to talk to the final prophet. So Jesus is referring people to go listen to Muhammad.
Other prophet.
So they did the same thing with John the Baptist. So they have this story where John the Baptist baptizes Jesus and then tells his own following that you need to follow Jesus from now on. Now, I have no doubt that there was a John the Baptist. There was quite a following for John the Baptist. But it does seem obvious to me that this story, it is an interpolation, at least, where they've added the part about where John is now telling everybody to follow Jesus instead of him, because that doesn't happen.
That's highly problematic, because John baptized Jesus and praised him, but from just on the next page, read literally, he says, there is some Jesus coming around, and he asked his disciples, go ask what the Jesus is. Didn't you baptize him like some day ago? Don't you aware who he is?
After you told everybody to follow him?
Yeah. So why do you ask who he is?
Yep.
Yeah, that's
that was one that I haven't heard other people point out that one before. I mean, I listen to an awful lot of criticism for the Gospels, but that one I can't remember anybody ever bringing up.
Yeah,
that John the Baptist forgot who Jesus was right after he told everybody to follow Jesus from now on, which is something nobody would ever do.
Yeah, so that's one more contradiction for your pile, I guess.
Yep.
So there is a lot that I found myself as a sincere believer. So I was honest to myself, and I asked, let's say I have some problems with understanding. So let's see what Old Testament says. Maybe then I can understand better. That's what I thought, at least. And
it's interesting you describe yourself as a sincere believer, because I've noticed there's a lot of people who say that they're a sincere believer, and those are two words. Which one do you favor? Because if sincere is more important to you, then you won't always be a believer. And if believer is more important to you, then you're not going to be sincere very much longer.
Yeah, so sincere was much more important to me. So I was always telling myself that I will rather face the even uncomfortable truth than lie to myself.
Yeah.
So sincere was priority to me.
Yeah.
So I decided to look at Old Testament and see, well, maybe then I will understand what the fuck is going on with New Testament. And I opened Genesis book, first page, and because I had physical education, and I seen, well, the sun is created just after the
4
light.
days in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
say, well, that's
After
total
plants.
bullshit. Yeah, and after plants, yeah, uh, how were the plants feeding? And also this thing that not the sky, but in English it's firmament, right?
Yeah, well,
So
yeah.
there,
What the Bible describes when it says firmament, it doesn't say it all in one place. It doesn't give all the descriptions in one place. The description of the firmament is found interspersed throughout the Bible. But what it describes is a solid disc, a rakia of what. In one place it says it's like mirrored glass. In another place it's like molten glass. In another place it's like hammered or shaped.
yeah,
So it's considered to be a solid domicile. And then there's
yeah,
windows in the top that let the water in because above the firmament is water. And then the sun and the moon and the stars are all contained inside of this dome.
yeah, and
And then the dome sits
stars
over the flat disk of the earth.
yeah, and the stars are smaller than the sun and the moon. And I thought, well, that's total bullshit. I cannot accept it already.
Yeah.
And that's the first page. Yeah,
And
and
that is the
then
first page.
only the first page.
Yep.
So, and then second book, which describes creation already, but the whole different way. Yeah, and that
With things coming in a different order, even.
yeah. So
Instead of God creating male and female, created he them, where he created people.
yeah,
Suddenly in book 2, no, he doesn't create male and female. He creates only one guy,
yeah,
and
and
it's only
then
the one guy because
and
God
from
forgot. He made male and female for all the animals, but forgot to make a female for the human. He gave the guy nipples and testicles, but forgot why he did that.
and also this thing in the throat. I forgot how it's called in English. The
Oh,
thing,
what they call the Adam's apple.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so and yeah, well, I seen this story, and yeah, I seen that actually serpent tells the truth that they Adam and Eve will not die if they eat from this knowledge tree, but they will have knowledge. They will have their eyes opened, and it happened. So it seems like a serpent was right, and God was for some reason forbidden knowledge.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
and also this problem that I noticed right away was this life tree. Well, what if Adam eats from life tree? It was not forbidden by God. Then does he become eternal? Does he become deathless?
Because according to the last paragraph in Genesis 3, God has to yank Adam and Eve out of the garden lest they reach out their hand and also eat from the fruit of the tree of life, because then they would live forever.
Yeah,
And if they hadn't obviously eaten from the fruit of the tree of life, then they would not live forever. So they were already mortal. So Christians always want to say that that sin brought death into the world, but their own fairy tale says otherwise.
Yeah, so and he also brings this angel to secure this tree of life from any intruders, I guess. Yeah, so that story was bullshit, and I seen through it already. And then this Cain and Abel, which is also really Cain and Abel is total bullshit, because God describes that. So I guess one should sacrifice this. Uh, how do you say it in English? I forgot this animal. So God needs some blood, and not just some fruits and vegetables. He's not that harmful. He's actually
Yeah, this is a blood cult. This is a death cult. You've got to kill something for me.
yeah. And when Cain didn't do it, he was guilty, and God didn't look on his givings. And of course, Cain was angry. Well, God didn't answer his prayers. Uh, and then what's the funny part is God asks Cain, like, so Cain is disappointed, and God says, Cain, what is wrong with you? As he didn't reject his givings just a minute ago. So I think God, in a way, when he's saying what is wrong, he's actually trolling Cain. So he's being sarcastic, I think.
Yeah.
If the story is taken at face value. And then Cain went to kill Abel to give vengeance, and then God give vengeance to Cain. So that's also a total bullshit story. Yeah, and then this global flood, which is also from scientific point, I was already aware that couldn't happen as it described in the Bible.
Yep.
So there is not so
It's not
much.
just that it couldn't happen. We have proof that it didn't happen. That's an important
Yeah.
thing to
So
throw out.
yeah. So I knew the basic things. I was, let's say, um, I was not deep. I hadn't deep knowledge in many fields, but I knew one thing for certain: there is not that many water to cover all Earth. It cannot
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah,
So
there was a guy named Walt Brown who came up with the idea that maybe the Earth could be completely flooded if the Earth was completely, if all the mountains and valleys and everything were flattened down. But even so, you still couldn't. Yeah, maybe you could flood the Earth to maybe a few inches or so of depth, but it's not enough to drown everything. You could, if you flatten all of the mountains, and so what they wanted to say was that all of this water erupted from underground somehow, and or it was in a canopy around, an ice canopy around the Earth that somehow melted and created a bunch of rain. Whatever the bullshit excuse they come up with, there was nowhere for the water to come from, and there was nowhere for all of that water to go, even if it caused all the mountains and valleys in the process.
Yeah.
And remember that Noah's Ark was supposed to have landed on Mount Ararat.
Yeah,
and this was, of course,
also,
there had to be a mountain there for it to land on.
Yeah,
which
and
means,
the mountain is described to be Ararat, the actual mountain that exists in reality.
when you look at the height of that thing, how tall Ararat is, and it's what, 2,000 meters, something like that.
Yeah.
But when you look at the height of that, if that's what the mountain is, now that the flood has caused this volcano, and it's a volcano, that's an important thing to bring up too. But the flood has caused this volcano. The depth of the water for the ship to be, or the boat or whatever, to be on the level or the altitude that it was, means that after the mountains were created, the boat still ends up 2,000 meters above sea level. Absolutely impossible.
Yeah.
There's nowhere for the water to go.
Physically impossible.
Yeah.
But also I find it highly funny, as I was still a sincere believer, with sincere being main point. And actually I find that when Bible says, well, the windows on firmament opened, and the water came out to earth, and and that thing got me. I said, "Well, enough already. Yeah, I'm not buying into this." It's
I remember the first time I tried to read the Bible, as everybody does. You start on page 1, and right away I have to go and ask my mother, "What's a firmament?" And she had no idea. Like, how can you believe in this book and not know what any of the words mean?
well, it's a problem. It's not the only one.
Yep.
So also because I had some knowledge in biology, and so Bible actually gives the what the Noah's Ark depth and length, and so it gives actual numbers. So I looked it up what this means in meters, and then I looked up what the diversity of animals were at the time, and I said, well, there is no fucking way all animals would be in the same ark with that length. No way. They
Yep.
doesn't fit in doesn't fit at any way. Even if you stack them up, they will not fit
The
still.
interesting thing with this is that I talk to people all the time who know that all of this is ridiculous. They know that it's impossible, but they're determined to make believe anyway. And I don't understand that mindset.
And they come up with excuses um, and all projection and so on. Yeah, that's
Yep.
irritating.
Yep.
Yeah,
So,
and
Ilya, I want to make sure we get, because we're going to have to wrap up in a moment. So I want to make sure that you
yeah,
get out everything that you wanted to say.
yeah. So then, so I gone up through a Bible from cover to cover. Eventually, I would stop for some moment to make things and uh, get some rest, because the text is really heavy language, and also it's some reference and all that. But so I came out as already highly doubting my belief as a sincere person.
Yeah.
Yeah, and um, I come and ask believers and read the books. Well, maybe there is my answers. To all these problems, and the answers apparently were, you gotta believe first, and then everything else. So I asked, no, why do you believe in the first place at all this bullshit? What? How can you make this all up? And yeah, and all I get is weak excuses and bullshit stories, assertions upon other assertions, assumptions, and
Yeah.
that's everything.
And all of
So
it's circular.
yeah. So as I seen through it, I said to myself, well, I cannot be a believer anymore as an honest person.
Yeah.
I cannot lie to myself. So actually, the Bible has me deconverted.
You
That's
deconverted with just the Bible.
yeah. Well, also because interaction with believers were highly disappointing and even sometimes
Yeah.
pissing off. Yeah, you.
Yeah.
Uh, I think you give this. You get this experience too for over 20 years. Actually, that's. I don't know how you have so much patience to go over and over through the same conversation.
Yeah.
And with believers, they all say actually the same bullshit that was refuted 1,000 times, and they repeat it anyway. That was most irritating. And they actually, when they realize they're losing, when you press them, they actually concede to, well, you listen to devil, or you are yeah, yeah, and you are believing also to some other bullshit. You are just as bad as we are, and that's really funny.
What is it? What is it? What is the thing about religious believers? They have to pretend the unbelievers are believers.
Yeah,
That we're believing
that,
that
yeah, that's
we
unbelievable
believe in the
projection.
opposite. It's so frustrating for me. I don't have faith. I wish these people would quit trying to project their own bullshit onto me.
Yeah, and also confusing faith with trust, and
Yep.
pretending that's the same thing. Like, do
Yeah.
you have faith in your wife or your doctor or
Yep.
your government? That's not the same as religion.
I would not say that I have faith in my government. Absolutely not. Yeah, I don't, and I don't have. We don't have complete trust. I mean, I'll have some degree of trust, but it's
Yeah,
not complete trust like what faith is. So,
yeah. So
Ilya, I'm going to have to bail here in a moment. So I want to give you the last couple of minutes to say whatever you will before because I do have to cut and run. I apologize.
okay. So uh, actually, for believers, I highly recommend to actually not lie to themselves and actually study this Bible and read the Bible, because so many believers didn't read, even didn't open the fucking Bible. That's strange to me. How do you not open your holy book and not read what it says? And also, I decided to study some scholars from what Bible actually says and what does it mean, and context, cultural, and everything else. So I come up with some ideas that what Bible stories would mean. But so the main point I would make that I actually think that there is all these writings were definitely written by men. That there is no godly message anywhere. That's highly, highly primitive.
Yes,
Yeah.
primitive and
So
provincial.
yeah, and also sometimes really stupid and awful when
And
when they
immoral.
yeah, when they describe how God tells to kill everyone else, Midianites, Canaanites, and everyone else, just because they believe in different God,
Yeah.
so they are guilty already.
And
And
if there really was a God, would he care? Honestly.
well, yeah. So Bible God is cares about Jews killing other people and also each other. He encourages them. It's so this God is really unjust, even if let's say, even if Bible's God were real for some reason, it would be highly unjust, and I would not have to do anything with him. So
Yeah.
that's the most horrible person throughout whole Bible is God himself. That's the most amazing thing. So
Indeed.
not
And that's a perfect note to end the show.
so yeah. So it's not the Satan, not the devil, but the God is actually evil if you read the Bible.
Indeed.
Yeah.
All right, Ilya, thank you very much for this. And I'm sorry that I have to run so soon. But I sincerely
Okay.
appreciated your perspective, and I'm happy to hear it, sir.
Yeah, I appreciate your time also, and uh, I hope you will do more content to watch
Thank
for
you kindly.
videos with believers and all that.
Will do. Thank you,
Yeah.
Kanai.